Hello friends, welcome, namaskar, and in this session I will discuss about trade barriers. So friends, in the last few years this world is facing a big issue of protectionism. What is the meaning of protectionism? So protectionism basically means that any country is trying to restrict the foreign trade, especially the import of goods, right? So let us take for example USA. So USA is stopping the import of services from India. USA is stopping or reducing the import of goods from the China. What is the purpose behind protectionism? The purpose is to protect the local businesses, to protect the local jobs, to allow development of the domestic industries, right? So this is the policy of protectionism which most of the Western countries are adopting nowadays, right? So this policy of protectionism is based upon certain tools and techniques. So those tools and techniques are called trade barriers, right? Those tools and techniques are called trade barriers. So in this session we are going to discuss the trade barriers, right? So the topic of the discussion in this session is trade barriers. So this is part of the external sector in the Indian economy for the prelims examination. So what is the meaning of trade barriers? So these are the barriers, right? These are the barriers. Barriers basically means some kind of hurdle or some kind of impediment or some kind of roadblock, right? Trade. So hurdle on trade. Trade basically means foreign trade or external trade. This foreign trade or external trade, it happens in the form of imports of goods and services and exports of goods and services, right? So trade barriers means putting certain kind of restrictions on the import and export of goods and services, right? So this is what we mean by the trade barriers. So let us see. So trade barriers, it means any hurdle or impediment or roadblock that hampers the smooth flow of goods and services, right? So smooth flow happens through the import and export and payment from one destination to another. They arise from the rules and regulations. So how do these hurdles get created? These are not the natural hurdles. These are the hurdles which are created by the mankind itself. So they are the man-made obstacles. So these rules and regulations are put by the countries themselves. So for example, USA makes some policy and puts such regulations. So they arise from the rules and the regulations governing trade either from the home country. So either the home country will be controlling or the host country or intermediary. So they are the man-made obstacles, right? So they are not natural or they are not unavoidable. They are avoidable and they are man-made to the free movement of goods between different countries. Free and fair international trade is an ideal situation as it is beneficial to all the countries. So why free and fair trade is required? So if we see the world, the different countries are having own strengths and weaknesses. So suppose we take example of India. So India is having very skilled manpower, skilled and very cheap cost manpower. If we take about China and the Southeast Asian countries, those countries are good in the electronic items. China is good in the manufacturing. USA is a developed country and is very good in some of the high-end services, latest technologies. So different countries are having different strengths and weaknesses. This free flow of goods and trade in the form of free and fair international trade, it allows the most efficient utilization of the resources. So the resources of India, that is the highly skilled manpower, it can be utilized in the developed countries and the other developing countries. So the efficient utilization of the goods and services is possible through the free and fair international trade. So it is in the benefit of the businesses as well as it is in the benefit of the consumers. So consumers also benefit because for the consumers, two things are available. First, the better quality of goods and services, and second, the low cost of goods and services. So for the businesses as well as for the consumers, both sides of the trade are benefited. In spite of WTO, trade barriers exist. So WTO stands for Free and Fair International Trade. World Trade Organization, one of the agenda of the World Trade Organization is to promote free and fair international trade. But despite existence of WTO, the trade barriers exist. So these trade barriers basically allow the individual country's interest to be protected, right? So the national interest prevails over the international interest. So in every kind of foreign policy, the national interest is kept at the top. So even in the foreign trade policy, the national trade is kept at the top. That means whatever is suitable, more beneficial to my country, I will allow that trade. Right? So not that I'm not saying that whatever is beneficial to me, even if it is harmful to other country, I'm not saying that it should be harmful to other country. What I'm saying is that it should be matching to my national interest. It should not be harming my national interest. So let us take for example, China is producing very cheap cost goods and it start exporting a lot of goods to India. Now, after certain time, the Indian market will be flooded from the Chinese products. Once India's market is flooded with the Chinese products, first impact will be that domestic industries, the Indian companies, will be losing the market share, and even the Indian companies might have to close the factories, right? So the first adverse impact will be upon the domestic industries. Second, if the domestic industries are hurt, that means unemployment will increase. The people working in the domestic industries, they will lose their job. So the loss of the job will be there. Third, loss of revenue. The government will not be able to generate the revenue. Government will not be able to put the goods and services tax, income tax. So there will be loss of revenue also. And fourth, our country will become dependent upon the foreign country. In the future, if China suddenly stops exporting the goods and services to India, then we will not be able to establish the domestic industries suddenly, right? So we will become dependent upon the foreign country. Therefore, in this scenario where China is flooding the cheap goods and services to India, and India's industries and jobs, economy is becoming vulnerable, India's government will like to put some kind of barriers. India's government will like to put some kind of barriers so that India's economy do not become dependent upon the Chinese economy, and the local industries is protected. The jobs of the people in the local industry are protected, right? So now you must be having a fair idea why we need to have the trade barriers. Now, there are two kinds of trade barriers. So before discussing two kinds of trade barriers, let us see what are the reasons for the government intervention. Why are these trade barriers? So as I just discussed, there are two kinds of reasons. One is the economic reasons and another is the non-economic reasons. Economic reasons means first, preventing unemployment. So if domestic industries are adversely affected, then unemployment will be there. So through the trade barriers, unemployment is prevented. Protecting the infant industries. So the new companies in the domestic area, if we protect those companies, then in the future we can actually promote the industrialization. Fourth, improving the comparative position. So every country wants to improve its share in the international trade. To protect our share in the international trade, we will try to reduce the import and increase the export. Non-economic reasons. First, maintaining the essential industries. So we would like to maintain the essential industries so that we do not become dependent on the other countries. So to avoid the dependence on the other countries, we will be maintaining the essential industries. Number two, dealing with the unfriendly countries. So the countries like Pakistan, to control the trade with them, to put the economic restrictions, we might have to put such kind of restrictions. Or if we take another example, the USA and China, they are having the trade war. So both of them countries, they put many kind of restriction. Another example is USA and Iran, both are having unfriendly relations. So USA puts a lot of trade sanctions. So those sanctions are having the form of different trade barriers. Maintaining the control. So we want to maintain the control in our hand. We want to maintain the control especially about the infrastructure sector. Preserving national identity. So there are certain industries which promote our national identity. So for example, the agriculture sector. So in India we have the basmati rice, we have different kind of fruits, vegetables and other food grain items. If we try to promote them and we restrict the import of other countries' products, then only our identity can be enhanced. So we will try to export our products to outside world so that our products can become famous in the world scenario. So objectives of trade barriers, this is in much more detail. First, to protect the domestic industries from the foreign goods. So for example, the mobile handset industry. Number two, to promote new industries and research and development activities by providing a home market for the domestic industries. So we want to promote new industries under Startup India and Make in India. And this promotion is possible only when we are having the control over the import of goods. If there is huge import of goods, then our domestic industries, they cannot develop, they cannot grow. Number three, to maintain the favorable balance of payment by restricting import from the foreign countries. So this favorable balance of payment is possible only when our exports, they are more than or at least equal to the import, right? So even to maintain the balance of payment, we need to have the trade barriers. To conserve foreign exchange reserves of the country by restricting import from the foreign countries. So we want to increase the foreign exchange reserve so that our international position is improved. to protect the national economy from dumping by other countries with surplus production. So it is quite possible that some other countries, for example China does some kind of extra production, and extra production is dumped into India at a very low price. So to avoid this kind of situation, to avoid the dumping situation, we would like to put some kind of trade barriers to mobilize additional revenue, right? So even by putting some kind of duties or taxes, duties here means taxes, by putting some kind of duties and taxes on the imports and exports, the revenue is generated for the government. So this is basically the tax revenue, which is part of the revenue receipt. Next, this also restricts conspicuous consumption within the country. So for example, overconsumption of the crude oil based products, petroleum products. So we want to restrict the petroleum product consumption. Why? Because first of all, it is polluting, and secondly, it is depleting our foreign exchange reserves. So to control the consumption of such kind of product, the trade barriers might be imposed. We might have to put the import taxes so that their cost is increased and people reduce the consumption. To counteract trade barriers imposed by other countries. So other countries might also put some kind of trade barriers. To counteract them, we might also have to put some kind of barriers. To encourage domestic production in the domestic market and thereby making the country strong and self-reliant. So self-reliance is also one of the basic objectives behind the trade barriers. Now what is the demerit of trade protection? What is the demerit of trade barriers? The biggest demerit is, number one, it restricts the process of globalization. So in 1990s, this world opened up itself so that there can be free flow of goods, people and capital across the national borders. So this process of globalization is actually hampered. And secondly, if there is protection, or to be precise, if there is overprotection, it actually hurts the domestic industries in the long term. How? You might ask, sir, how does it adversely impact the domestic industries? In fact, the trade barriers the purpose of putting the trade barriers is to promote the domestic industry. But why you are saying that it will adversely impact the interest of the domestic industries? Yes, this is true. Why? Because if someone knows that my industry is protected, my market is protected, whatever quality of goods and services I am producing, that is perfect, then I will never try to improve. I will never try to get into new research and development activities. So the motivation for the efficiency will not be there. I will not care for the quality of goods and services. I will not care for the cost of the goods and services. Even if there are large number of industries, they are competing with each other, still at some point of time they might form a cartel. They can go for the cartelization, and in the long term it will hurt the interest of the consumers as well as the overall interest of the economy, because they will not be taking care of the quality, they will not be going for the efficiency improvement, they will not be going into the research and development activities, right? So this is also one of the biggest disadvantage of the protectionism. So let us see. Number one, protection is against the interests of the consumers, as it increases price and produces variety and choice, right? So if I am restricting the import of goods and services, I am actually restricting the choice for the customers. Number two, protection makes producers and sellers less quality conscious. So because the producer know that there is less competition, the goods and services cannot be imported from outside India, they will not be that much competitive. It encourages domestic monopolies, right? So as I told you, either if there is only one player, then there will be monopoly, or if there is a group of players, there are group of producers, large number of producers are there, they might get into competition, but in the long term they can also go for the cartelization. They can make a group and they can start exploiting the consumers. Even inefficient firms may feel secure under protection. So inefficient firms will be secure. That means there will be no incentive for the efficiency. It discourages innovation. So research and development will come down. So we can see the protectionism or the trade barriers have its own set of disadvantages also. Protectionism leads to corruption. Yes, this is also possible. So when there is a taxation system, when we impose taxes on the flow of goods and services, then they can be lobbying. That means certain industries can go to the politicians and they can demand tariff on the imports on their own products. So the lobbying is promoted. In this lobbying, there is a possibility of nexus between politician and businessman. This unholy nexus is also called as crony capitalism. Reduces volume of foreign trade. So if we put the trade barriers, the volume of the foreign trade is reduced. Protectionism leads to uneconomic utilization of the world resources. So the benefits of the WTO, benefits of the globalization, those benefits are lost. Now there are two kinds of trade barriers. Is the tariff barriers. Tariff here means the taxes or duties. So in case of tariff barriers, the country imposes some kind of taxes to discourage the import, or in some cases even to discourage the exports also. Non-tariff barriers, that means these are the barriers which are other than the tax barriers. So non-tariff barrier can include the barriers like quota, that means the quantitative restriction. Or it can include some kind of licensing system, etc. So now we will discuss these two categories in detail. So first of all, the non-tariff barrier. So these are the administrative barriers which are imposed by the domestic government. For example, India. Why? To discriminate against the foreign goods in favor of the domestic goods. So we are favoring domestic goods. We are favoring domestic goods against the foreign goods. So these barriers can be of 10 different categories. First, quota system. Quota system means there is upper limit with respect to the quantity of goods which can be imported. So the government will put some upper limit over the quantity which can be imported regarding a particular industry or regarding a particular product. Second, import licensing. In this case, the importer will be required to get license or the permission from the government before anything can be imported. So through this licensing system, the government keeps a control over whatever is what item is imported and how much it is imported. Voluntary export restraints. So sometimes the countries might involve into export control as agreed with the importing country. So for example, India and USA agree that India will not export certain products. So India will control its own export to the USA. For that, it will put some kind of restriction. State trading. So state trading basically means that public sector companies they will involve into export and import. That means the scope for the private companies will be reduced. So the role of the private companies in the import and export will be reduced and role of the public sector companies will be enhanced. Preferential treatment through trading blocks. So there are various trading blocks. For example, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So these kind of trading blocks, what they do, the member countries agree that the imports and exports which are being done along with the member countries of this bloc, they will be giving preference, and the import and export with the non-member countries, they will not be preferred. So preferential treatment through the trading blocks. Production and export subsidies. So these kind of subsidies can be given to either to promote the export or to control the import. Packing requirements. Certain kind of packaging requirements might be put so that the cost of packing is enhanced, the cost of production is enhanced, the cost of export is enhanced, and the export is controlled. Health and safety measures. So in many cases, health and safety based precaution can be taken. For example, in the recent time, after this coronavirus issue, a lot of restrictions have been put over the import from the countries like Italy, Iran, China, and other European countries, which are the most infected countries. Consumer formalities. To control the import, the government might ask for a lot of documents. Forex regulations. So the government might put upper limit over how much amount of foreign exchange can be paid for a particular transaction. So these are the different kinds of non-tariff barriers. Now let us see each one of them in detail. So first one is the quota system. Quota system means the restriction over the maximum quantity. The quantity of a commodity permitted to be imported from various countries during a given period is fixed in advance. So there is upper limit which is import on the quantity of import. So this is called quota system. So whenever you heard the term quota system, just think that this is the quantitative upper limit over the import, right? So this quota can be in 4 different categories. First is the tariff quota. So in the tariff quota, up to a specific limit, there is no duty. So for example, government says that up to 1 crores of mobile handset, there is no import duty. There is no import duty. And for the quantity exceeding 1 crore mobile handset, there will be some kind of import duty. So this is called tariff quota. So the tariff is imposed if it exceeds the quota. Suppose here the quota is 1 crore mobile handset. So import of a commodity up to a specific volume, in our example 1 crore, allowed are allowed duty free or at least a special low rate. Imports in excess of this limit are subject to duty or a higher rate of duty, right? So either there will be no duty up to 1 crore or the duty will be at lower rate, and beyond 1 crore there can be higher rate of duty. Second is unilateral quota. Here a country unilaterally means without discussion with the other country. So here the country unilaterally fixes a ceiling on the quantity of the import of a particular commodity. The country will itself say that okay, I will not import more than 1 crore mobile handsets from China, or maybe more than 2 lakh cars from Japan, USA, UK, whatsoever. So this is a unilateral quota. Bilateral quota means the quota which is negotiated between the two countries. So it results from negotiation between the importing country and a particular supplier country, or between the importing country and the export groups within the supplier country, right? So here two countries, they discuss with each other, and after that this quota is implemented. So this is called bilateral quota. So unilateral quota and bilateral quota. Next is mixed quota, or this is also called as domestic content requirement. So please mark this as important, because this has been in news in the last couple of years. So in this quota, what happens? The importing country says that you can import certain product. You can import certain product, but the import that you are doing, in that import you have to utilize the raw material from our country. So if you are when you are producing that imported commodity in your country, you have to utilize some raw material from our country. So this is domestic content requirement. So our domestic content will be used in this imported finished goods. Here the producers are obliged to utilize domestic raw materials up to a certain proportion in the production of a finished product. So certain domestic raw material will have to be used in this case. Import licensing. So in this case, the importer is supposed to get some license from the government, and based upon that license, the importer will be allowed to buy the foreign exchange for the purpose of payment. Voluntary export restraints. So here the exporting country itself puts some kind of export restraints, and it can be as a result of the agreement between the exporting and the importing country. So the best example in this case is the multi-fiber arrangement. Multi-fiber arrangement which has been under the aegis of USA and EU. What is multi-fiber arrangement? So in this arrangement, there have been restrictions over the textile imports from developing countries. Right? So in this case, what happens? The developing countries cannot export beyond a limit to the countries of USA and EU. This is multi-fiber arrangement. So this multi-fiber arrangement is the best example of voluntary export restraints. So voluntary export restraints are bilateral arrangement. So these are the bilateral. That means these are the result of discussion between the two countries. These are not the unilateral. To restrain the rapid growth of export of specified manufactured products. So in this multi-fiber arrangement, these manufactured products means the textile products. US and EU have regulated the imports of several products. For example, under the multi-fiber arrangement. Under the VER, the exporting country voluntarily restrains the export of a specific product in order to either help the other country to reduce its trade deficit or to protect domestic industry of the importing country, right? So here in this case, this is true. VERs are adopted under the pressure from the importing country. So in this case, importing country are basically the USA and the EU. State trading. So state here means the state companies or public sector companies. State or public sector companies. So the public sector companies, they are involving themselves into the trading. They are indulging into export and import, and they are leaving less place to the private players. So in India, do you know the name of companies? So these companies are STC, State Trading Company. Another company is MMTC. So the STC and MMTC, these are the central PSUs which are indulging into the state import and export. So through this, the government controls the export and import activities. Preferential treatment through the trading blocks. So I already gave you the example of trading block, for example, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So the member countries of ASEAN, so there are 10 member countries of ASEAN, all of them are the Southeast Asian countries. So the 10 member nations of ASEAN, they will prefer the import and export within the group. They will prefer the import and export with the members of the ASEAN, and they will not prefer the import and export with the non-member countries. So this is called preferential treatment. So some countries form regional groups. So regional group example is ASEAN, and offer special concessions and preferences to member countries. As a result, trade is developed among the member countries and allows advantages to all the member countries. So, but it acts as a barrier to the non-member countries. So it is acting as a barrier to the non-member countries. Next, production subsidies. So the production subsidies, they are given by the government to producers of exportable goods for the production of goods and services. So these subsidies are given so that our products become more competitive. So they are in the form of raw material at the low cost, right? So the government will be giving raw material at the low cost, or it will be giving the credit or loan at the low interest cost, or it will be giving the tax concessions. So different kind of benefits are provided to the exporters so that they can increase the export. So they act as the export incentives. They act as the export incentives. So they are not the tariff barrier, because in case of tariff, some taxation is levied. Here no taxation is levied, rather it is the opposite. Export subsidies. So export subsidies are given in the post-production stage, right? So production subsidies are during the production stage, and export subsidies are in the post-production stage. That means when production has already been completed and the goods are being transported. So in case of transport, it will be transport subsidy, or in case of shipment, it will be low cost shipment credits. Health and safety measures. So recently the world is facing the crisis of coronavirus. The countries like Italy, Iran, China, they are the worst affected countries. In such scenario, whatever imports are being made from those countries, they will be under great surveillance. So the countries like India, they will be putting a lot of restrictions. So they will be taking samples. They will not be allowing import from certain cities. For example, Wuhan is the originator of the coronavirus, like that. So this is the best example of the health and safety measures. And these kind of restrictions are not happening for the first time. These kind of restrictions have been earlier also, right? So many countries have specific rules regarding health and safety concerns. Such health and safety measures are mainly applicable to the raw materials and the food items. For example, import of chicken was banned from China after the bird flu was reported. And recently, this COVID-19, which is one of the strain of the corona family. Residue of pesticides in the food products, level of germs. So all these things are actually taken care of. Packaging requirement. So sometime the regulations on the packaging requirements are imposed. So by fixing packaging requirement, high restriction is imposed on the trade. The standards push up the cost of product. So the import comes down. Sometimes the cost of packing exceeds the cost of product because of higher packaging requirement. So the country like India, we can say that you have to put such kind of packaging, you have to put such kind of packaging. The cost of packaging itself becomes very, very high, which leads to uncompetitive import. Consumer formalities. So there are many documents which are to be submitted by the at the consular, right? At the consular office. So if the formalities are increased, it acts as a barrier. Foreign exchange regulations. The payment and the receipt of the import and export are done in the form of foreign exchange. If the government puts upper limit over the foreign exchange, then automatically it acts as the foreign exchange control. So important non-tariff barriers include quota system, product standards in the form of, for example, packaging requirements, product labeling, domestic content requirement, consular formalities, state trading, preferential arrangement, foreign exchange regulation, and import licensing system. Now, what are the advantages of the non-tariff barriers? The first advantage is technological innovation. When there are barriers, it leads to research and development in the domestic industries. Number 2, social benefits. It saves people from the unemployment. So it saves jobs. Environmental benefits. So by putting regulation over the health and safety measures, we protect our health and our environment. Managerial innovation, competitive advantage. So our domestic industries, they remain competitive. Integration of regional blocks. So for example, the ASEAN countries became much more integrated. Review of legislation. So the world and the national level legislations can be reviewed from time to time. So now we will discuss the tariff barriers. So tariff barriers basically means the tax, right? So suppose these are the two countries. This is India and this is China. India is exporting some products to China and is also importing some products from China. So one kind of duty is import duty. So import duty will be levied on the imports which are being made from the China, right? So the tax will be levied when they enter the boundary of India. This is called import duty. This is one kind of tariff. What is the purpose of levying this tariff? The purpose is to discourage the excessive imports from China and also to earn some revenue for the Indian government, right? So protecting the domestic industries, discouraging the import from China and earning the revenue for the Indian government. In case of export, when the products leave the India, then also some taxes are levied, which is called export duty. What is the purpose of putting the export duty? The purpose is to discourage the export of certain essential products. So for example, nowadays when there is a coronavirus crisis, the government wants to discourage the export of the masks and the sanitizers. So the government is putting export duty on the products, on such products. So export duty and import duty both are levied, and both of them are called tariff barriers. Now these tariff barriers can be of different types. So what are the types of tariff barriers? So these can be of different types. First, based on the origin and destination. Based on the origin and destination of goods. So as already discussed, import duty, which is levied on the import, and export duty, which is levied on the export. Apart from that, we also have the transit duty. So in some cases, when the products are passing through third country, the third country can also impose some kind of tariff. Second category can be based upon how the tariffs are calculated. So based upon the tariff calculation. So the tariffs or the taxes can be in either in the form of specific duty. Specific duty means the taxes are calculated per unit of item. For example, if mobile handset is being imported, 1000 rupees per mobile handset. So here per unit of quantity is the basis of calculation of tax. Another can be ad valorem. This ad valorem means the tariff is levied as a percentage of value of the import or export. So for example, the government says 5% of the value of import. So if the value of the mobile is 10,000 rupees, then 5% of the 10,000 rupees will be the tariff. Third can be a combination of both, which is called compound duty. So compound is basically a combination of specific and the ad valorem duty. So the duty will be calculated on the quantity basis also and on the value basis also. And last is sliding scale based calculation. So in case of sliding scale based calculation, the tax rate, whether the specific tax rate or the ad valorem tax rate, is different for the different prices of the product. For example, one mobile is costing 5,000 rupees. So the specific duty or the ad valorem duty for the low cost mobile, the cost of which is 5,000 rupees, is less, and another mobile is costing 1 lakh rupees. So the ad valorem and the specific duty for the 1 lakh rupees mobile is high. So this is called sliding scale duty. The third category is based upon the trade relations we have with the different countries. So based upon this, there are two different categories. One is single column tariff, another is double column tariff. Single column tariff means the single rate is applicable to all the countries, whether the country is friendly or unfriendly. So irrespective of the country, the single rate of tax is applicable. Double column means the rate of tax for the friendly nation is less and rate of tax for the unfriendly nation is more. Right? Fourth, on the basis of the purpose they serve. So the purpose can be first revenue generation. The second purpose can be protection. The third purpose can be anti-dumping. The fourth purpose can be countervailing and next can be safeguarding the interest. So let us see each one of them. If the purpose is revenue generation, if the purpose of levying the tariff or the tax is purely to generate the revenue for the government, then it will be levied on the products of mass consumption, for example biscuit, food grains, and the rate of tax will be low. Second, if it is for the protection purpose, we want to protect our domestic industry, in that case the tax will be levied on selected items, not on each and every item, and the rate of tax will be high. Anti-dumping. What is the meaning of dumping? Dumping means if some foreign country is exporting the goods to our country at a very low price, the price is even lower than the normal cost of production. The purpose of such kind of dumping is to capture the market of India. So to protect ourselves from such kind of dumping, we impose a duty, we impose a tax which is called anti-dumping duty. Next is countervailing duty. So suppose Chinese government gives a lot of subsidy to its exporting companies. Chinese government, to promote its own export, it gives a lot of cash assistance and the export subsidy to its own exporters, and because of that cash assistance they are exporting a lot of goods to India, and that poses a threat to the India's domestic industries. So to counter the cash assistance and the export subsidies which have been given by the Chinese government, when goods are coming to India, the Indian government will impose some kind of import duty on those products. So that import duty is called countervailing duty. Next is safeguard duty. Safeguard duty is imposed when the government finds that there is an unusual level of import happening in the country. So to act as a temporary measure, this safeguard duty can be levied. Right? So these are the four major categories. So just have a review. First is based upon the origin and destination. It can be import duty, export duty, transit duty. Second, based upon the tariff calculation, it can be specific duty, ad valorem duty, compound duty, or sliding scale duty. Then based upon the trade relations, it can be single column duty or double column duty. Then based upon the purpose, it can be revenue generation. It can be for the purpose of revenue generation, or simply for the protection, or anti-dumping, or countervailing, or safeguard. Now we will discuss each one of them in detail. So first, tariff barriers. So a tariff barrier is a levy. Levy here basically means the tax collected on goods when they enter a domestic tariff area through customs. When they enter means when they enter the national boundary. That means there is an import. The tariff refers to the duties. Again, the duty also means taxes. Right? Tax. So you call it tariff, you call it tax, you call it levy, or you call it duty. All the four terms are having the same meaning. That is the tax which is imposed by the government and which is to be compulsorily paid to the government. The tariff refers to the duties imposed on the internationally traded commodities when they cross national boundaries. That means it can be either on the import or it can be on the export also, and maybe in the form of heavy taxes or import duties. Tariff means the duty on import and export, right? So tax on both the import and the export. The tariff on import is to make the price of imported goods equal to the domestic goods. It increases the price of imported goods, so import is discouraged, right? So we took the example of mobile handset. If it is imposed on export of goods, it is the aim is to discourage the export and make the goods available in the domestic market which otherwise may not be available. Example is the face masks. So import tariff barriers, let us see the different classification. First, the classification on the basis of origin and destination of the goods crossing the national boundaries. A. Export duty. If the tax is levied by the country of origin means the country from where the goods are originating, on a commodity designated for use in other countries, the majority of finished goods do not attract export duty. So export duty is a very rare phenomena because none of the government want to put a burden on the exporter. Because if they impose export duty, the cost of product will increase. If the cost of product increases, then it will be uncompetitive to sell in the international market. If that is the case, then we will not be able to export, and if there is no export, then we cannot receive the foreign exchange. So that will be an adverse condition for the trade balance, for the current account balance, and for the overall balance of payment. So to improve the balance of payment, we rarely use to this export duty. This export duty is used only in the emergency situation. For example, during the coronavirus crisis, this export duty is being levied to avoid the export of face masks and the essential commodities. Such duties are normally imposed on the primary products. So they can also be imposed on the primary products in order to conserve them for the domestic industries. So there are many scenarios where the basic commodities like onions, the prices of onions, tomatoes, they sharp like anything. So in those situations, the government can impose export duty. Next is import duty. It is a tax imposed on the commodity, right? So duty basically means tax. It is a tax imposed on a commodity originating in another country by the country for which the product is designated. What is the purpose? The purpose is to raise the revenue, right? So tax is basically the tax revenue. And to provide protection to the domestic industries. Transit duty. Tax imposed on a commodity when it crosses the national frontier between the originating country and the country to which it is consigned to. So this transit duty is imposed by some third country. So for example, if the goods are moving from India to Afghanistan and they have to pass through Pakistan, then Pakistan can levy such kind of duty. Now on the basis of quantification of tariffs, how do we quantify the tariffs? One is specific duty. Here the calculation is done on the basis of number of physical unit. For example, rupees 300 per metric ton on the cold rolled iron coils. So we took the example, for example, rupees 1000 on per mobile handset. Ad valorem duty, this duty is imposed at a fixed percentage on the value of commodity imported. So for example, if we are importing the mobile of rupees 10,000, then 5% of this will be calculated as the tariff. So this is ad valorem. So here the fixed percentage, that is a 5%, for example, we are calculating like that way. Compound duty, here the commodity is subjected to the both specific and the ad valorem duty. Sliding scale duty, the import duties which vary with the prices of the commodities are termed as the sliding scale duty. These may be either on a specific or ad valorem basis. In practice, these are generally on a specific basis, right? So for example, if we are importing a normal mobile, then the tax are at a very low rate, and if we are importing luxury mobile, then the tax may be at a very high rate, right? So this is called sliding scale duty. So specific duty, ad valorem duty, compound duty, and sliding scale duty. Now on the basis of trade relations, number 1, single column tariff. When the tariff rates are fixed for various commodities and the same rates, here the key point is the same rates, single rate or same rate is applicable to import from all other countries. So all the countries, whether the country is a friendly country or unfriendly country, all the countries are treated as same. Double column tariff, here the two rates of duties are fixed. The low rate is made applicable to a friendly country and the high rate is applicable to all other countries. Next is based upon the purpose for which they are levied. So if the purpose is purely to generate the revenue, so it aims to collecting the substantial revenue for the government. So this is basically tax revenue, which is part of the revenue receipts. So it aims at collecting substantial revenue for the government Here the duty is imposed on the items of mass consumption, but the rate of duty is low. For example, biscuits, for example, food grains like wheat, rice, etc. Protective duty or protective tariff. It aims at giving protection to the home industries or domestic industries by restricting or eliminating the competition. These tariffs are usually high and the purpose is to reduce the import. Anti-dumping duty, right? So to make it more clear, let us take an example. For example, in China, we talk about mobile handset. So there is a mobile handset company, let us say for example MI. So this company is manufacturing the mobile handsets and the cost of production is 8,000 rupees per unit. 8,000 rupees per unit. Now this company wants to export to India and want to capture the market of India. So to capture the market of India, this company is ready to bear the losses and this company is ready to sell at 5,000 rupees. So this company starts exporting the MI handsets to India at rupees 5,000 per unit. Now in India there are many companies, for example Samsung, Nokia or any other company. So they are the domestic industries. Their cost of production is 10,000. Their cost of production is even more than the MI cost of production. So their products are available at 12,000 rupees. So the mobile of Samsung is available at 12,000 rupees and mobile of MI is available at just 5,000 rupees. So in this case, this MI will capture the entire India's market. So to avoid this kind of dumping, this is called dumping. To avoid this kind of dumping, Indian government will levy 7,000 rupees on this mobile handset and this duty is called anti-dumping duty. So now when 7,000 rupees is levied, that means the cost of sale is 12,000 rupees. The product is available to the customer at 12,000 rupees. So in a way we are protecting the domestic industries and we are avoiding a situation where domestic industries collapsed. The people working in the domestic industries, they lost their jobs, and also we are avoiding a situation where our country becomes dependent on the another country, right? So if dumping is allowed, then our domestic industry will collapse, and after some time, even if MI want to sell the mobile at 20,000 rupees, it will be able to sell because the domestic industries are already collapsed. There is no competition from the domestic sector. So to avoid such kind of adverse impacts, the government imposes anti-dumping duty, and this is allowed as per the WTO regulations. So this is the example of anti-dumping duty. So let us see. Anti-dumping duty. Dumping is the commercial practice of selling goods in foreign markets at a price below their normal cost. So in our case, we took the example that the cost of production is 8,000 rupees so as to capture the foreign market, right? So let us see in much more detail anti-dumping duty. Often the large manufacturers from abroad. So in our example, we took the example of MI. They may export the goods at very low prices. So their export price is just 5,000 rupees. Compared to the prices in the domestic market. So the price in domestic market is 12,000 rupees. Such dumping may be with the intention to cripple domestic industry. So they want to destroy the domestic industries like Samsung or dispose of their excess stock. This is called dumping. So this practice is called dumping. In order to avoid such dumping, central government can impose under section 9 of the Custom Tariff Act. So there is already a law. This is under a particular law. Anti-dumping duty up to the margin of dumping on such articles if the goods are being sold at the less than its normal value, right? So in this case, the margin of dumping is 7,000 rupees. So this 7,000 rupees can be imposed as the tariff. Levy of such anti-dumping duty is permissible as per the WTO agreement. So this is very much permissible under the WTO agreement. Anti-dumping action can be taken only when there is an Indian industry producing like article, right? So in India, we already have Samsung and other companies. Only then we can impose this kind of duty. Otherwise, we cannot impose this kind of duty. So this is anti-dumping duty. The next is countervailing duty. So let us understand countervailing with an example. So in case of countervailing, let us take, for example, the example of USA or maybe UK government. So in UK, suppose there is a company, car manufacturing company, and this company is manufacturing the car and cost of production is 10 lakh rupees per car, 10 lakh rupees per unit. Now, UK government wants to improve the export to the India. So, in order to encourage the export, UK government gives some cash assistance to the car companies. And UK government says that, okay, we are giving you 3 lakh rupees at per car of the car cash assistance. So now you can sell this product at 7 lakh rupees to the India, right? So in India, this product is available to sell at 7 lakh rupees. Now there are some domestic companies like, for example, Hyundai or Maruti, and for them the cost of production is also 10 lakh rupees. So now from the consumer point of view, the consumer is getting the benefit from buying this imported product of 7 lakh rupees. And in the long term, this domestic industries, they will be losing because their cost of production is 10 lakh and they are not getting any kind of assistance. So to avoid this kind of scenario, the government will impose a tax equivalent to the cash assistance given by the foreign country. So the Indian government, it will impose 3 lakh rupees per car of the countervailing duty, CVD, and ultimately the cost of import will be rupees 10 lakh, which is equivalent to the domestic prices of the products, right? So this gives a fair ground to the domestic industries also. So in case of countervailing duty, the duty is imposed by the India to counter the cash assistance or any benefit which is given by the foreign government, right? So this countervailing duty is leviable as an additional duty on the goods imported into the country, and the rate structure of this duty is equal to the excise duty on like article produced in India. The base of this additional duty is CIF value. So this is a very technical thing, you don't need to get into this. What I am trying to say, in case of anti-dumping, the purpose is to avoid the dumping, purpose is to avoid the low cost import. And in case of countervailing duty, the purpose is to nullify the impact of the cash assistance or other kind of benefit given by the exporting country. So here you can see anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty. Duty imposed to nullify the benefits offered through cash assistance or subsidies given by the foreign country. So in our case, UK, and cash assistance was given to the extent of 3 lakh rupees per car to its manufacturers in the destination country, manufacturers of car industry. The rate of such duty will be proportional to the extent of cash assistance or the subsidy granted. Then we have preferential tariff. So this is the tariff favoring the products of one country preferential to another. It is extended to partner countries who have signed FTA with each other. On entering an FTA, the custom duties for selected imported goods that originate from FTA partner countries are lower or totally eliminated. So for example, India has signed an FTA with the Sri Lanka, right? So whatever goods are imported from Sri Lanka to India, those goods will be having low rate of import duty or no import duty, right? So those countries with whom we have signed the FTA, foreign trade agreement, those countries will be getting benefit, right? So FTA means free trade agreement, not foreign trade agreement. I spoke by mistake, right? So those countries with whom we have agreed to free trade agreement, with those countries the import duty will be at lower rate or will be at nil rate of cost. Then we have safeguard duty. So this safeguard duty was also in the economic survey 1920. It was mentioned in economic survey 2019-20. So whenever the government observes that some commodity is being imported in an unusual quantity, the quantity is very, very high, in that case the government can impose safeguard duty as a temporary measure to control the quantity of import. The central government is empowered to impose safeguard duty on specified imported goods, if the central government is satisfied that the goods are being imported in large quantities, right? So this is the condition. Goods are being imported in the large quantities and under such conditions that they are causing or threatening to cause serious injury to the domestic industry. So this is also important. They are being imported in the large quantity and they are threatening the existence of the domestic industry. Such duty is permissible under the WTO agreement. So this can be a statement in the MCQ. So in the prelims examination they can ask a question whether this is allowed under WTO or not. Yes, this is allowed as per the WTO. Safeguard duty is a step in providing a need-based protection. So the purpose is to provide need-based protection to the domestic industry for a limited period with ultimate objective of restoring free and fair competition. So the purpose is actually to protect the domestic industry so that in the long term the free and fair competition is allowed. So these are the trade barriers we have discussed. We have discussed the tariff barriers and the non-tariff barriers in detail. Each one of them we have discussed in detail. With this I complete this discussion and I hope you learned a lot from this, and whenever you are reading the newspaper you will keep finding one or other of these terms. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much. God bless you.